guys, we are live. Welcome back to the F1 Fanatics channel for the F1 Weekly News Show. During race weeks, we always do our kind of F1 Weekly News Show as a live stream, and after FP1, as it seems quite a good time to round up all the kind of latest news and stories from the world of F1. We've got Liam Talks F1 in the chat. Welcome. Thank you for coming in the chat as always, Liam. And we've got some quite juicy stories, I think, this week on where respective drivers are going to be. And it was another kind of interesting FP1. No surprise that Mercedes are topping the charts again. That car looks very good. A big surprise probably, though, is that Red Bull didn't look strong at all. And maybe potentially that Racing Point is going to be the second quickest car this weekend and potentially a podium for Sergio Perez. But we will certainly see, and he is certainly a guy that is going to be involved in the news stories here. But I'm just going to tweet live on Twitter that we are live. So give me 2 seconds on that front. Okay. That's tweeted, so everyone knows that we're live on that front. Right, so let's get into the story. So I think probably the best place to start the F1 Weekly News Show this week is with the driver market. Now, obviously, with Mercedes, I think a lot of people were hoping that it would be George Russell that would be getting the Mercedes seat for the 2021 season. It looks, well, actually, it's confirmed that he will be driving, seeing out his contract with Williams. And so he won't be kind of a free agent or, available for some teams to get until the 2022 season. So he carries on his intro into F1 with the Williams team. And it means that Valtteri Bottas, he was saying that contract talks were progressing very well. It seems very much likely that Valtteri Bottas is going to stay in that other Mercedes seat because, let's be honest, looking at the first two races, I can't see with how far ahead they are. They're going to be kind of competing at the top. It's going to be between Bottas and Hamilton. For me, it means that it's probably going to be Lewis Hamilton wrapping up 7 this season and going into next season. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton's been an incredibly successful team. Valtteri Bottas has been a great supporter. And yeah, why would Mercedes want to change that? Yes, they could say looking forward to the future, but part of it in F1 and in sport is capitalize on the situation when you're in top. When you've got a world champion in Lewis Hamilton who doesn't show any signs of kind of dropping off performance-wise, then hey, you're certainly not going to look to change the winning combo when you've got it. If you guys in chat, hi Mo in chat, hi Liam again, Mike, my man. Understeer podcast, Fergus. Hi, Fergus. Earlier today at 9 a.m., actually, on Fergus's YouTube channel, the Understeer podcast, I was on kind of lucky to be invited on as a guest for that podcast, and we spoke about Haas and kind of the rise and fall of Haas and where it's all going wrong. Although Haas doesn't necessarily look too bad this weekend. It'll be interesting to see where they are in the hands of Kevin Magnussen. Although, actually, that's another story probably to talk about in terms of Gunther Steiner definitely didn't sound happy about the comments that Roman Grosjean made in the press conference there. Morning to Katie as well. Thank you for joining us on the live stream. But back to the driver market and with Mercedes, yeah, it makes a lot of sense for me. Now going on to the scale of a decision that doesn't make a lot of sense with rumours going around, I suppose it can kind of make sense. Heavy rumours this week that Racing Point are going to sign Sebastian Vettel for the 2021 season. Obviously, we know that the full-time world champion is without a seat, with not even being offered a contract with Ferrari, and Carlos Sainz replacing him in that second Ferrari seat for the 2021 season. It's rumoured that Seb's Caesar team next year will be, well, Racing Point converting obviously into Aston Martin at the expense of Sergio Perez. And that for me, I'm gutted about. Like, Sergio Perez has done so much for that team. He's been with the team pretty much since 2014. I'm convinced it's, since 2014. He's been with that team such a long time. He brings investment in that team. He himself is a paid driver. Obviously, a lot of people get upset that Lance Stroll is a paid driver. Well, Sergio Perez is a paid driver as well. It just turns out that he's a pretty talented driver as well. His telecommunications companies are definitely big backers of Sergio's F1 career. But to drop Sergio Perez at a time where, well, he could have, if the team strategy was right, got a podium in week 1. He went from 17th to 6th, could have easily been 17th to 5th, but he gambled on going for 17th to 4th in week 2. So fantastic performances from him. Again, looks very quick this weekend in the Racing Point. So you wouldn't even rule out maybe a podium for Sergio Perez if they qualify well and the race goes well. If there's a bit of rain, then that Racing Point doesn't look particularly good in rain, but we'll certainly see on that front. But yeah, I just, it doesn't sit easy with me. Sergio Perez, he wasn't given an opportunity at a top team. A lot of people say, well, he was with McLaren in 2013. McLaren didn't get a single podium in 2013. That's not Sergio Perez didn't. Jenson Button, obviously a world champion at this stage of his career, hadn't got a podium the entire season. It was the start of McLaren's decline. Obviously, when the turbo hybrid era came in with the Honda engines, it went even further downhill. But yeah, McLaren weren't great in that season, and they promised the seat to Kevin Magnussen. And, you know, they kind of shafted Sergio Perez. He hasn't had a shot at a big team. He's worked his way up with Force India, with Racing Point, obviously converting now into Aston Martin. And if he is, obviously this is still rumours at the moment, and he said that he was contacted by F1 teams with those rumours surfacing. And I think even IndyCar have kind of, approached Sergio Perez. But surely if they get rid of him, I know Seb is a 4-time world champion. Lawrence Stroll, he's clearly a very good businessman. Surely, if he's going to replace, he wants to go for the Sebastian Vettel move, surely he has to bin off Lance. And, you know, even if he makes him a reserve driver, Lance hasn't done bad this season and he's 20 years old. But just for the respect of the team, and the team aren't going to respect you. They have a loyalty to Sergio as well and everything he's done for him. Yes, look, the past few seasons, Vettel hasn't been on it. Is he an upgrade on Sergio Perez? Probably still is. But I don't know. And I don't want to make that call in terms of it. But it seems a crazy decision. I'll see in the chat if anyone's talking about it. Lance Stroll is half the driver of Perez, says Liam Talks F1. Lawrence Barretto has said he'll come on, which is good. Hopefully Sergio Perez gets a drive for the top being. The only thing that I can see with Sergio Perez getting a drive for the top team is if Red Bull decide to go outside their program, put Alexander Albon back into the AlphaTauri, obviously Toro Rosso when he was joined, and put Perez in that Red Bull, which I actually think would be a very good move for both parties concerned. But hey, I don't know, and it seems a very shocking rumour. It would be a positive to see Sebastian Vettel in F1, and with Aston Martin, it could be a very good and very kind of fruitful relationship. But yeah, it seems very strange. But staying on Racing Point, obviously post Austria race 2, the Styrian Grand Prix, Renault put in a protest. Racing Point are very upset about this. They've worked with the FIA at every stage of this car development, with Nicholas Tombazi, the chief technical director for the FIA, and they have greenlit it at every stage. So if they now said that the Racing Point is illegal, Lance Stroll again reiterating that the car has, the Racing Point have all the evidence to prove that their car is legal. But yeah, I think they would be very upset with the FIA if they suddenly changed their mind and said, hang on a minute, this isn't legal. Because all we can go on what Sky Sports F1 are telling us and what's being reported. But yeah, if a team has worked with the FIA at every stage and they've told them it's okay, expect for this to kind of be thrown out, this protest. And also the fact it is with it, well, with Racing Point, expect them to be the third, if not second quickest car out there, because they look really quick. And if Racing Point's, if Red Bull's early kind of practice pace is a sign, it doesn't look good for Red Bull this weekend. It doesn't look good in the hands of Max Verstappen, but it's early doors. You can change setups. You can change the way the car is, not drastically, but being 1.4 seconds it was in the end off Lewis Hamilton's time was a big gap for Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton on the same compound of tyre as well. Yeah, Nicolas Tombazzi did work for Ferrari, I believe, in the 2000s. I was going to say Perez to Red Bull, Albon to AlphaTauri, and Kvyat to Haas. I could see Kvyat to Haas in replacing Grosjean. They do like experienced drivers, and Daniel Kvyat is a driver who is still of good quality. I thought he was very unlucky to miss out on the Red Bull seat halfway through last season. He hasn't necessarily been on the best form since then, but I do think he's probably just peed off the fact that Red Bull overlooked him for Alexander Albon, which at the moment is jury still out for me. I'm not going to do it because I know I've been a bit harsh on Alex Albon recently. But yes, jury's still out on Alexander Albon, and his pace again in practice compared to Max wasn't great as well. Hello, JB. Thanks for joining in the chat. There's an ad under this stream saying book a pep talk with David Coulthard. Well, who better to book a pep talk with than David Coulthard? But yeah, with that Racing Point, it's certainly interesting. Haas has obviously been brought up in the chat a little bit. Obviously, Roman Grosjean yesterday said that it was the elephant in the room whether Haas will continue with their future within the sport. And Günther Steiner is the team principal on the pit wall this weekend. And basically, he was very upset that Günther Steiner was talking on the behalf, that Roman Grosjean was talking on behalf of the team. He was like, the question was directed at Roman. I don't know why he felt like he could talk on behalf of the team. So, yeah, the relationship between Roman Grosjean and Günther Steiner is never the best at times, and I don't think this helps it. And maybe it's another nail in the coffin to Roman Grosjean, because he really is struggling with that Haas car this year compared to Kevin Magnussen, who has, suffered issues in both races in Austria, but last week got a very good performance considering he had a damaged floor for pretty much the entire race from lap 3, with being involved in, being affected by that Ferrari collision that was obviously a poor state. Looking at the paces again, it looks Racing Point there, Renault there or thereabouts. I think it's going to be pretty close between Renault and McLaren in there. The Mercedes power unit just looks so immense, and obviously the Mercedes car just looks so immense. Do we see realistically a possibility of Valtteri Bottas challenging Lewis at this track? But Lewis has won here 7 times and can make it a kind of equaling records 8 times. I think Michael Schumacher holds the record of most wins at an F1 track with 8. So Lewis can equal that this weekend at Hungary, which Liam, again, very upset being a Ferrari dear. JB doing his best. Günther Steiner impression there. Günther Steiner is the Gordon Ramsay of F1 team principals, annoying and loves swearing and abusing his employees. Can we debate whether or not it would be a good idea to make the power unit a spec part? I think you would lose a lot of interest from manufacturers if you made the engine a spec part, because that is quite an important factor. And over the years, I suppose obviously the Ferrari power unit has won the most Grand Prix. I think Mercedes are up there as well. Renault and Ford, I think that's the top 4 in terms of engines. But that's quite different. Those all are within like 40 of each other, I think, of race wins. I think with the top Ferrari being 239 Grand Prix won with their engine, and Renault is 168, 169. But there's a big gap to Honda in 5th, who I think engines have only won 76. So you could say, obviously, what the engine is quite an expensive part. I think it's the most expensive part the F1 car to fund. So it certainly kind of damages teams a lot. And if they were going into price cost cutting, it certainly would be interesting to make the power unit a spec part. But I think you'd get a lot of manufacturers reluctant to do that, just because the power unit is their display to say, this is how good my power unit is. This is obviously the technology that we then transfer down into our road cars. Please buy our road cars. For the non-manufacturer teams like the Williams, the Hasses, the Racing Points, then it definitely probably would appeal to them more to have a spec engine, so they only have to worry about having the best aero side of things as well. In the 3 races at Hungary where Hamilton and Bottas are teammates, Bottas is actually 2-1 up on Hamilton, and Hamilton only out-qualified Bottas when it was a wet quali. Yes, JB, Bottas does have a good qualifying at Hungary, but I think when it comes to the race, Hamilton does have that extra, and unfortunately, you don't score any points on a Saturday. It'll be interesting. Bottas obviously leads the championship going into this round. It's going to be very interesting to see whether Valtteri Bottas can maintain that charge. It's going to be difficult. If he can, I think mentally, if he can beat Lewis Hamilton at Hungary, we've said, is one of Lewis Hamilton's strongholds, and that would be absolutely fascinating to see mentally. I think Bottas would slightly get in Hamilton's head, because I think at the moment Hamilton doesn't really seriously consider Bottas as a challenger. But if Bottas was to win this weekend, I think he would have to start taking his teammates certainly a little bit more seriously on there. I feel though having cars on different levels is part of the F1 game and part of the challenge. Or if your Ferrari fit an illegal rocket engine, hence why they made it F2 who drew in Formula 1. Yeah, Formula 1 for me has always been about engineering and building the best car. I think that's why a lot of people have problems with Racing Point and Pink Mercedes, Tracing Point, whatever you want to call it, just because of the fact of, it's essentially copying. Part of the joy and wonder of F1 is these amazing minds coming up with these brilliant cars, and the drivers as well getting the best. And it's the kind of combination of, it is almost like the F1 fantasy game itself. You've got to manage your budget. It's like the Formula 1 game now that they've done. You've got to manage your budget, your departments. You've got to choose where you spend your budget. Do you go high on drivers? Do you go high on kind of chassis? What part of it as well? And I think that's all the appeal of Formula 1. And Formula 1 will never be good as a spec series. If you want a fantastic spec series to watch, the best one for me outside of Formula 1 is IndyCar. That's brilliant, where you only have 2 engine manufacturers in terms of Honda and Chevy, and they're basically pretty similar on performance, and obviously cars are very spec series on that. It's better than Formula E for me, but Formula E is very much in its junior years on that one. But yeah, I just think coming from this weekend, any news stories really else to kind of round up? Vettel was saying that the Ferrari upgrades aren't going to be a game changer. I think is well surprising, showing how much that kind of Ferrari power unit really is struggling this season. Is Sebastian Vettel has never been higher than 18th in the speed trap this season, which to me is mental. Absolutely mental that a Ferrari car is that slow. Usually Ferrari's pace is one of their biggest strengths, but yeah, it is absolutely crazy on that front. But yeah, I think that's a roundup of the main news. Obviously, yeah, what do people think of George Russell staying at Williams for the 3 years? Do you think it's a good thing? For me, it wasn't really a surprise, because I think Williams and Russell had kind of stated that he has a contract with Williams for 3 years, and it never really was kind of, everyone said, well, George Russell is a good driver, so he should get the Mercedes seat early. But I think all the signs were from Williams that he was always going to see out that contract at there, and he's going to go fresh into Mercedes probably for the rule changes. But he's starting to look, he didn't look best impressed. I think George was disappointed that he wasn't getting the Mercedes seat for the 2021 season. George is usually very positive about Williams, very positive about driving for Williams, but I don't think he's particularly about this happy that Claire Williams has basically stamped her foot down and said, we're not letting you go. You have a contract with us, and that's that. I did talk about the Aston Martin rumours a little bit earlier for Vettel. I was basically saying I would be fuming if they dumped Checo at this stage. And if Checo did leave Aston Martin and he was to go to Haas or Alfa Romeo, I would personally prefer to see him in a series like IndyCar, where I think he would be competing for championships within a couple of seasons there. He's still, early young in his years. Scott Dixon, obviously, is leading the championship over there at the moment. He's 39 currently. So age clearly isn't an issue out there. It is the skill and talent. And Sergio Perez definitely is a driver there. So it would be fascinating to see him in IndyCar if he got ousted from Aston Martin. I would hate to see him go back down the midfield and work for an Alfa Romeo and Haas, who, they've got no chance of challenging at the top, where Aston Martin genuinely do look like in the next couple of years, they're going to be serious contenders at the top. I heard them talking about Perez maybe going to Red Bull and BBC. Like I said, if Perez leaves Aston Martin, but it's to Red Bull, that would be a great move. And I said, I think they would be a fantastic outfit together. I think Verstappen needs a driver who's going to push him. Perez would be more to the Ricciardo level, or get more to that kind of Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber relationship. From early signs of what I've seen, I don't think Alex Albon has got it, at least not for Red Bull to be competitive in the next few years. He could probably deal with going back down to AlphaTauri and learning his trade in F1 out of the spotlight a little bit more in terms of that. But Perez to Red Bull, I would get behind those rumours. It'd go from there. But it's so difficult. Red Bull so rarely go for drivers outside their bubble that it would be pretty difficult to see that happening. Checo is... I don't know if Checo's underrated. I think everyone knows how good Checo is. I just think he maybe is... Everyone thought that Nico Hülkenberg deserved a top seat in Formula One. Well, if Nico Hülkenberg deserved a top seat in Formula One, Sergio Perez definitely did. And like I said earlier, that McLaren definitely wasn't a top seat in 2013 because it didn't get a podium all season. And that wasn't Perez, that was Jenson Button as well. So, definitely on that front. That is probably the big news stories of this week. It'd be crazy, but it might just be rumours. It was rumoured that it's going to be announced 2nd of August, which obviously is only a couple of weeks away. So I guess we're going to pretty much know, because I believe in Perez's contract, for them to get him out the team, it has to be before the 31st of July. So we'll know pretty quickly whether Perez has been dropped, or we won't have to wait too long from there. Remember Leclerc's struggles at the start of the Ferrari stint. He was constantly beaten by Vettel, but then turned it around. I don't see Albon challenging Max, but I expect him to get better. I think naturally he will get better just in there, but I don't know about that. In Bahrain, in the second race of the season, Charles Leclerc would have had a race victory if his power unit didn't give up on him. I think Charles Leclerc was a lot more competitive to Sebastian Vettel early doors. A 4-time world champion, let's not forget, in a team that he was the closest challenger outside of Mercedes to Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc definitely, he struggled a little bit, but he definitely was challenging Vettel more than what Alex Albon has. And for me, just from what I've seen of Alexander Albon, he's done okay, but he hasn't done anything great in that car at the moment. He hasn't had a great performance in the Red Bull because he's never beaten anyone for me who he shouldn't have already beaten in that car. I feel harsh on it because Albon is such a nice guy, but let me put it in this terms, okay? I'm probably going to get stick for this. Right. If you compare the differences from teammates from Lance Stroll to Sergio Perez, and everyone says that Lance Stroll is a pay driver who doesn't deserve to be in Formula One, and he's not good enough for that team. If you compare the kind of gaps between teammates between Albon and Verstappen, it's very similar to me. And so, if you don't think Lance Stroll is good enough for F1 and goes from there, you maybe have to start asking questions of whether Alexander Albon's performance is good enough in that Red Bull car as well. That's something throwing out there. I think it's a serious discussion to have. And Sky Sports brought it up today in FP1. It is something to go. But I would love for Alexander Albon to set the record straight. I would love him to go out, have an amazing weekend, and maybe challenge for a podium and just have a really strong weekend in that Red Bull. I would love to see it, but from what I see him as a driver in his performances, I don't see anything from him that says, wow, this guy's a really good guy and deserves one of the top seats in Formula One, which is Red Bull is at home. Why do Williams steering wheels always look different on everyone else's? Basically on Williams, they're the only team, I think it was part of an aerodynamics design. I'm not sure if it was brought in by Paddy Lowe or it was someone of their previous technical director. But on the steering wheel, obviously, you see a lot of people's steering wheels have the screen inbuilt on the steering wheel. So they have their gears coming up. And obviously, when you're playing on the F1 game, you'll see, obviously, it coming up on that front. With a Williams team, actually, the screen is separate to the steering wheel. So they look one of the more kind of classic steering wheels without the screen on it. That was just something that they had aerodynamically in their design, and it fitted better with their cars. And it's something that they've always gone from there. Austria was a great performance, in my opinion, on the Alex Albon one. I'll ask you, this is a good debate, because this is good to this is why I enjoy doing live streams in terms of this, because it's good to kind of have a discussion about this. My question would be, Austria was a great performance from Alexander Albon. Well, Max Verstappen retired early in that race, and he was driving third in that race. And he was miles off the Mercedes, which the Red Bull looked with, obviously, Max Verstappen fighting the Mercedes in week 2. But, Alex Albon was nowhere near, but he was ahead of the other cars who he should be beating in that weekend. He then had a safety car, which then put him onto fresh, soft tyres. And obviously, the Mercedes didn't pit and had used hard tyres. For Alexander Albon to have had a great performance that weekend, for me, he wasn't unlucky in Austria. He gambled, he went for an ambitious move, and it didn't come off. A great performance would have been capitalising on the great strategy that his team put him in and winning the race. It was Albon's driver error for me. Obviously Lewis Hamilton made the contact, but Albon, he took the risk. The risk didn't pay off. He's got to accept that. I wouldn't say it was a great drive by Alexander Albon. I would say that he did what he needed to do and ended up in potentially a very good situation. He's never driven. Charles Leclerc was an amazing performance in that race, because he took a car that shouldn't have been where it was and finished in a second place podium. Alexander Albon is doing what's needed, which is maybe all that Red Bull need him to do, but he certainly needs that gap to be closer to Max Verstappen. Obviously today is the memory of Jules Bianchi. Obviously, 5 years ago today, we sadly lost him. He would have been a top talent. And it is incredibly sad that we never got to see his career and what he might do. I imagine he probably would have been in the Ferrari seat right now. And it is, that telling reminder that Formula One will never be safe completely. And it is so sad to, kind of see. And it's a really sad time to kind of, that passing. And it's nice that we kind of still remember him. But he was a massive loss for the sport. And it's important to kind of obviously take today to kind of remember what he did. I agree in terms of in going back to the point, JB, in terms of moving away from Jules. Albon did nothing wrong. No, I like him going for the aggressive and bold overtake. There's nothing wrong. But in the same instance, I don't think Hamilton did anything wrong either. The more I look at it, the more it is a racing incident in terms of it's always a risk going around the outside of turn 4 there. You're always going to have track running out. And Lewis was ahead going into the corner, and Albon only overtook mid-corner and had the pace. Lewis could have yielded, but these are racing drivers. They're not just going to let someone go past and yield a position. They're going to fight tooth and nail for it. And it was a penalty for Hamilton in the end. But yeah, I just think with Albon, he's got to take it on the chin. It can't be. You can't have it both ways. You can't just in the midfield. People will let you past in that position because the difference in cars is so much. When you're fighting the best car on the grid, he's not going to just let you past. Great to see Ed Butler in chat. Great to see you. Obviously, one of the kind of original guides in the live streams when we started live streaming at the back end of last season. What's my top 3 predictions? I can't see anything other than Mercedes 1-2. So I'm going to go Lewis Hamilton P1, Valtteri Bottas P2, and I'm gonna throw it. It's now. Where is the Red Bull's pace? I don't know. In terms of, is the Racing Point quicker? I feel like Max Verstappen will find something because he is such a good driver. So I'm gonna put Max Verstappen P3 as well. So yeah, that's my top 3 predictions. Ed, be interesting to see people's top 3 predictions in there. Hi JB, I'm all about this as a fan channel, and it is all about having debates in terms of that. I mean, I can be completely wrong. I'm just a fan like all of you guys saying my opinion on F1. Whatever I say isn't fact. Because I say that I don't necessarily think Albon's of the level doesn't mean that Albon is that level. It's just the kind of opinion on it. And I think, in F1, we need to have more discussions like this of just kind of people coming from different points of views and introducing different arguments. And at the end of the day, when lights go out on Sunday and the performance goes, that's what kind of tells the real difference on that. We can kind of make our judgments from that. But yeah, JB, I always enjoy the debates, and I always enjoy kind of having a great chat with you guys in the comments. And it's the fantastic thing about live streams because we can have these debates go from there. Ed got a new phone, so I don't have Twitter or Skype. I forgot password. That's why I haven't been in touch. Oh, no problem at all, Ed. But also I'm going to the F1 college now. I changed my mind. Fantastic, excellent. Good to hear that you are going to go on to your F1 college, Ed, and hopefully you end up maybe in a career in F1. That'd be very cool. Definitely on that front. The F1 debate show is the best channel for that. Obviously, it is great for kind of debating because it's in their name, the F1 debate show. They are great in terms of that. See you later, Liam. Have a good shower from there. F1 college, Ed will be able to let you know a little bit better on that one, but I'm pretty sure it's a college that's based out of Silverstone. It's in the Silverstone area, and it does A-level equivalent topics, but are specified towards getting a career in Formula One. That's what I believe on that front. We've definitely gone off on a crazy tangent on this live stream with the F1 Weekly News. So we'll probably round a good chat. But if people are kind of done, we'll probably round off the chat for today's live stream with obviously the quali live streams to come at the weekend after, and obviously race live stream as well. As usual, the live streams is the best part of the weekend, reacting to all the action. Go from there. Is an Air Motorsports Union Silverstone as well? You can take it from there. It's at Silverstone to become a mechanic in all sports and motorsports. Yeah, that's what I was. So I'm glad I kind of got that. I'm watching the F2 currently. Yeah, it's the practice, isn't it? Always interesting to see. Is there any rain come? Obviously, the rain clouds looked a little bit from there. What do we think of? Maybe I'll include that in terms of what do we think of the kind of feeder series so far? The F2 and F3. Who are your early title favourites? For me in F2, it's Schwartzman, Eilert, and Ticktum. Probably my early favourites in terms of that. In F3, I can't see outside the Prema boys, so probably a title fight between Vesti and Piastri on that front. It's wet track. Nice. Yeah. That is true, actually, JB. In the comments in bigger channels, no fault to the content creators by himself, but the debates definitely can get out of hand because there is definitely, yeah, it gets a little bit crazy to control things, because when things get bigger, it is a lot hard to control. But yeah, enjoying obviously being in part of this and having great debates with you guys on there. I do lots of karting and a bit of single-seater stuff. Nice. Nice. Liam knows a kind of Alex O'Grady, won a karting championship, only Irish one, and is the youngest at 11 years old. Very nice, very interesting, a nice one to go. Maybe see how his kind of career progresses and develops. I like these lives because in the bigger channels you can't get a word in. Well, yeah, I do try. It is nice, obviously, having the fewer numbers in here because I can keep up to date with everything on chat there. It looks like the Carlins are taking the early pace advantage in practice in F2. Oh, Alice Powell is obviously going to be commentating on the F2 and F3. Obviously, drive it in the W Series. That's very good for Alice. That's certainly something there. I think karting is definitely... Oh, you're interviewing Lawrence Barretto soon. Awesome stuff. Fergus, definitely check out Fergus's podcast as well, because he's getting some brilliant guests on there. Not only just me from this weekend with the Haas video that came on there. I'm praying for Lando to boss it again. Obviously, Ed, big McLaren fan. Yeah, be interesting. The McLaren's place, I don't know how good they'll be. Look, I expect everything to fall in place for Racing Point, and unless there's wet qualifying again, it would be, I think, strongly favours Racing Point on early signs on there. Yeah, obviously they got Alex Brundle, Matty G, and Alex Powell. I think it's been some great stuff. Alex Brundle was so funny on commentary because it was literally just listening to a younger version of his dad, which was fantastic on that. And at least they finally stopped showing the kind of half-hour clip. I think last year it was always in the gap between Grand Prix of Alex and Martin when they, I think they were in Aston Martin's GT cars. They were going around the Nürburgring, weren't they? And they finished, I think, second in their class, something like that. But anyway, that was on like repeat constantly, seeing Martin and Alex. So I'm no surprise that he actually got there. But it'd be interesting, actually. Obviously, Davide was F2 and F3 last year, and he did a great job. But I don't know if it's just to do with the coronavirus and he's not comfortable coming in as part of it. But yeah, no, it's these guest commentators alongside Alex Jacques have been pretty cool. To be there. Yeah, Alex Brundle can be a little bit repetitive, but he is nice getting that kind of driver insight. And I'm actually interested to see Alice Powell, because I actually think Alice Powell's a very good driver herself, and she does actually a lot of driver coaching for young British drivers. I know she's helped someone like Ayrton Simmons along the way, and she's a big advocate for obviously young females as well going in. So having that commentator of, obviously Alex Jacques is the passionate and very knowledgeable fan commentator, and having Alice Powell from the driving element of it definitely will be interesting on there. Vettel to Racing Point. I think, yeah, is that official? It's definitely just the rumours. Yeah, obviously we spoke about that. But anyway, with 38 minutes into this live stream, we've probably waffled on long enough, but I'll give a last kind of roundup. If there's anything else you guys would like for me to discuss in the chat, then obviously drop the messages in now. Otherwise, I'll round it off, and I'll hopefully see all of you tomorrow for the quali live stream, and hopefully we get a qualifying as good as we did last week. That rain affected qualifying last week was absolutely awesome, and Lewis Hamilton's lap was so good from there. Fergus, did you enjoy the new Twitter account? Yeah, obviously if you follow us on Motorsport Manager over on Twitch, that's always a good laugh. But Fergus has set up Fanatics Racing Team Twitter account, which obviously is a little bit of a jokey account, kind of following our Aston Martin goes from there. How has the American team look? Yeah, I spoke about that a little bit earlier. Günther Steiner obviously was very upset with Roman Grosjean being skeptical about Haas's future. Gunter, as always, is very positive about Haas's future. An interesting one, maybe, I saw someone kind of ask a question for Tomo on Twitter earlier, was should Haas maybe move to Renault as a customer for their engine, especially how the Ferrari power unit has dropped off. And for me, Renault have the second best power unit on the grid, with the Honda third and Ferrari fourth currently. Go from there. So yeah, I think that would certainly be an interesting. What would people think on kind of Haas maybe looking at maybe switching their allegiance from Ferrari to Renault? That would be interesting. I know Renault would probably be very keen for someone to take it, but I imagine any deal with Renault would definitely be Haas kind of would be for them to use one of their Renault juniors. Obviously, Christian Lundgaard and Zhao are the two kind of talented guys in F2 currently, out of a seat because Fernando Alonso, obviously the big news last week, joining there. A very good impression of Gunther Steiner in the chat from JB. But guys, I think I am going to round off the live stream now. I'm going to let you guys go and enjoy the F2 practice. Obviously, tune in for the FP2 practice later on. That'll be interesting to kind of see how the teams get on. A little bit of kind of rain, I think, later in the day. I think definitely rain for the weekend. Fingers crossed, that would spice things up and certainly make things interested to go from that. But yeah, guys, thank you as always for joining us in the chat. It's been some fantastic chats and discussion there, a fantastic kind of roundup of the news and talking about the latest stories and headlines and that. I hope you enjoyed today's stream, guys. But for now, UF1 fans, keep racing.